Hello and welcome to Tennessee Informer. I'm your host, Dave Vance. We're so glad you joined us today. Our special guest tonight is Andrea Gomez, the Tennessee State Director for Citizens for Renewing America. We're excited to have her with us tonight, and she'll be joining us in just a few minutes. But first, it's time for our announcements and updates. The Henry County Republican Party Second Amendment Rally is Saturday, July 22nd at 5 p.m. Free hamburgers and hot dogs at the Enoch Building, Henry County Fairgrounds, Paris, Tennessee. The speaker is Richard Archie, the West Tennessee Director and primary lobbyist, volunteer lobbyist for the Tennessee Firearms Association. Special guests are Congressman Mark Green, Senator John Stevens, Representative Tandy Darby, Representative Jay Reedy, and others. Richard Archie will speak regarding the principles and law related to Second Amendment protections of our God-given right to keep and bear arms. Richard is an exceptional and engaging speaker. You will not want to miss him. If you have not heard Richard speak, it's really a treat, so I really encourage you to come and hear him. He'll talk about measures citizens can take to effectively support the Second Amendment. In addition, our elected officials will provide updates regarding the August special session of the General Assembly called by Governor Bill Lee with the intent of passing a red flag law. Hope to see you there. Bring your friends. In the meantime, news and updates regarding the August special session can be found at the Tennessee Firearms Association. You just go to their website, TennesseeFirearms.com. Make sure you look at the podcast on there, especially the ones with legislators. And if you don't see yours on there, ask them why. Get them on record now. There's a lot of good information on that site as well about threats to our Second Amendment, to include the threat we face from Governor Lee's planned red flag session mentioned earlier. Don't take this lightly. Keep these things in mind. It only takes 55 votes in the House to pass a red flag law. There are 23 Democrats, all of which will support a red flag law. While we have a Republican supermajority in the House, we have no shortage of rhinos and second butters. If you don't know what a second butter is, it's a legislator or politician that tells you that he supports the Second Amendment, but, and then gives these long list of exceptions that tell you that he or she doesn't really support the Second Amendment. The Republican supermajority in the Senate has killed numerous bills that would have made our state compliant with the U.S. Supreme Court's Bruen decision that defines what it means to protect the Second Amendment. The Biden administration has money to give to states that pass red flag laws. The left will descend en masse on Nashville, creating a lot of pressure. Key GOP legislators have already suggested having to do something. We have to make it known to our legislators now that red flag laws under any name are unacceptable, and that the primary for 2024 starts August 21st, 2023. We have to show up. Make plans now to get there early. I also have an update you need to know concerning the annual fundraiser for the Tennessee Firearms Association, September 9th. It has been confirmed that Donald Trump Jr. will be our keynote speaker. Prior to this announcement, ticket sales for available seats were already well ahead of last year. So if you're interested in going, you need to get your tickets now. Tickets are $80 per, or $480 per table of 6, $640 per table of 8. The event will be held at the Farm Bureau Expo Center in the James E. Ward Agricultural Center on the Wilson County Fairgrounds, 945 East Batter Parkway in Lebanon, Tennessee. Go to TennesseeFirearms.com and click on the annual event to purchase your tickets. You do not have to be a member to attend. Also, just a reminder that WDXC radio station in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee has a very conservative talk radio program that the local Republican Party does every Wednesday from 5 to 6. The chair of the party, Brandon Taylor, is one of the hosts, and the secretary, Lawrence Sutton, is the co-host. These guys do a great job. They have great guests and commentary. You can listen to them at WDXC 95.3 or 105.3 FM and 1370 AM, or at WDXC Talk Radio on YouTube.com. Last but not least, if you want our state to step up and push back against our overreaching, often unconstitutional federal government, visit TNCSS at Weebly.com. That's Tennessee Citizens for State Sovereignty. Learn more about the nullification legislation we hope to get passed this session. There's no cost, it's an informational site, but we would like for you to click on the Substack tab to sign up. We need as many people as we can get to show support for this effort. Thank you. If you have an announcement from a conservative organization you want to announce on this show, send the information to tennesseeinformer.tv@gmail.com the Friday before the show. Our guest tonight is Andrea Gomez, the Tennessee State Director for Citizens for Renewing America. Thank you for joining us tonight, Andrea. Glad to have you with us, and tell us about your organization and why you're involved with Citizens for Renewing America.
Well, thank you, Dave. It's great to be here with you. Okay, yes, I am the State Director for Citizens for Renewing America. Citizens is the activist arm of Center for Renewing America. The organizations, we have a C3 and a C4, and so our C3 part, the Center for Renewing America, they're up in DC. They're very focused on policy, and writing really good educational materials, and working with the House Freedom Caucus with specific members of Congress. And our organization was founded by Russ Vought. He might be familiar to some of your viewers. He was in the Trump administration. He was the budget director. And then he's frequently a guest on some of the programs your viewers might watch. So he's on War Room with Steve Bannon from time to time. He also is on Fox News from time to time as well. Russ is known in DC as obviously being someone who understands budgets, but also very much a strategic thinker. And so he's got a lot of experience in DC. Wade Miller is our executive director for Citizens for Renewing America. He has extensive experience working with the grassroots. And so we have a whole team up there in DC that's working on policies and so forth and lots of different issues. And then I work at the state level to support the grassroots in Tennessee. I was not an activist previously. I like to say I'm an accidental activist, and I'll tell you exactly how that happened. But primarily, I'm a wife and a mom. I am a California refugee, or as I sometimes call us, political prophets, because oftentimes it's those out-of-staters that come in that see the writing on the wall, maybe before some of the native people. I was a teacher in California as well as in Middle Tennessee, so primarily elementary education, and here in Tennessee, working with the ESL population, teaching English as a second language to little kids from around the world. I loved my job. I loved my students. Everything was great until the fall of 2020, when we all had to go back to school. Not had to go back. We were blessed to be able to go back. I mean, very grateful to be in Tennessee where the kids got to go back to in-person learning. But we did go back with all the social distancing and the mask mandate and all of that. And I just knew in my heart that it was all wrong. I was very convicted that it was nobody had the authority or the right to mandate how someone should breathe or not breathe, whether they were students or staff members. So I decided to take a stand against the mask mandate, and I went into my school with no mask, with a big smile, with bright red lipstick. I got through 2 full teaching days, and then I was suspended and terminated for insubordination. So that's kind of how I became an activist. It turns out that, when you, at least for me, I can say that that was an act of obedience for me, and God has blessed me in that obedience ever since. So there are consequences for standing up for your values and what you believe in and your principles, but there's blessings as well. So I'm very grateful to be here working. I still am a teacher, by the way. I just teach taller students. So instead of elementary aged kids, I just have taller students now. So my job is to really support the grassroots across the state of Tennessee on America First. That's what we're really here to hold the line on, America First policies, and to support and elevate. So we're not a top-down organization that comes in and tells the state or the grassroots what they need to be focused on. What we do is we identify the focus that's here. What do people care about? What are they most concerned about? And then support them. And also we support them not just at the state level, but also with the federal issues as well. So one of the questions I like to ask is, how do you know what's going on in DC? And most people say, I don't know what's going on in DC. And I say, that's right. Do you have a friend in Washington, DC that will call you every Thursday and give you an up-to-date intelligence briefing for about 20 to 30 minutes and tell you what's really happening in DC? And everyone says no. And I say, well, you have that friend. When you are connected to Center for Renewing America, Citizens for Renewing America, you have that insider knowledge. And so we really do share that with the grassroots in Tennessee as well as other states. So let's see, where do we want to go from there?
Well, I want to say one thing about that call, that weekly call. I know that there's some people that have a pretty good relationship with their elected officials in DC. And I'm sure a lot of them confer with them, but I think it's good to have this other link, because you might find out that some of the things that we're being told by our reps, even if we have a good relationship with, are not necessarily the truth, or not the whole truth, or there's other parts that are left out. So I think that's something that it's certainly good for us to have, and I'm going to start trying to get on those calls myself.
Yeah, it's super easy too, because we call you once you're registered. And so your phone just rings at 4 o'clock Central or 5 o'clock Eastern time every Thursday. The call is 30 minutes start to finish. It never goes over. You'll get that intelligence. It's the most recent boots on the ground information. And then there's time towards the end of the call, last 10 to 15 minutes, for activists to actually ask a question. And then we followed up with really good, thorough call notes as well. So you don't have to worry about taking notes on the call. So it just makes it really easy for the grassroots to really get, the real information that they need. Because like you said, how do you know if they're telling you the truth? I mean, we want to assume, we want to believe that they're all honest, but they're protecting themselves as well. And or maybe you just need a different perspective.
Right. And I'm assuming this information comes from people within your group in DC that are maybe in on committee meetings, or they're just privy to other, channels of information that the average person is not.
That's exactly right. They're following bills, like right now, following the NDAA and the 12 appropriations bills that will be basically setting the budget for government agencies for the next year. So following all those bills, following committee hearings, but also with relationships with members. And so that's what we rely on Russ for, and others within Center for Renewing America, is they have those relationships. And, Russ really does a lot with strategy. So I think I've shared this with you before, but your viewers might not know this part, but anybody who followed the speaker fight,
right,
back in January, my 20-year-old self would be so embarrassed to learn that I sat up and watched C-SPAN and really nerded out and enjoyed every second of every round. 15 rounds they went on that speaker fight. So we're very clear that the members did the hard work. The members put their necks out. They took the risks to do all of that. But Russ played a big part behind the scenes on that strategy as well. Right. So it's such a great organization to work for. So excited. Yeah.
And the mission, again, it's not just federal level, it's also at the state level. So
yeah,
okay,
absolutely. And so in a nutshell, like that's our official mission. In a nutshell, we're here for God, for country, and for community. And I think that's what Americans are looking for.
Yep.
I haven't met anybody yet that doesn't agree with that mission.
Well, I would say anybody that's not happy with the direction of the country, which is every decent person that I know, they would have to agree with that mission.
Well, and if you ask people, what time is it? That's a question that Russ asks all the time. What time is it in America? And we would say It's 11:59.
Yeah.
That means time is not out, but it is time for us to really be engaged. It's time for us to fully execute our duties. We have a duty to God, we have a duty to our country, we have a duty to our families to protect what we've been given. This country is a blessing. Our
Yeah.
freedoms are God-given, but the way our founders established this country to protect those God-given rights, these are blessings. And I
Absolutely.
want to pass these blessings on to my kids and my grandkids.
And of course, you guys have a strategy for how you accomplish all this.
Yes, it's called picking big fights. That's the strategy. Like the speaker fight, that was a big fight. Right now, it's picking. Well, the debt ceiling fight was a big fight, and that fight started to go really well with the House members passing a decent debt ceiling bill. Now, I understand that many of your viewers are going to say, ideologically, we don't want to see the debt ceiling increase, and I 100% agree with that under the circumstances, knowing that there had to be some sort of a debt ceiling increase. So how could we leverage and get the best deal possible? And they actually did pass a really good bill that cut $4.8 trillion from the federal budget in order to increase the debt ceiling. However, when it came down to negotiating between Kevin McCarthy, Speaker McCarthy, and Joe Biden, Kevin McCarthy really violated his agreement with the House Republicans and pretty much took what had already been passed and threw it out the window. Ended up getting a horrible deal that's worse than even a clean debt ceiling increase. So, we lost a little bit of leverage there when it came to these appropriations fights, but we are supporting our group in Congress on how to, hold the line and to support them. And I encourage our grassroots activists across the state to really be in contact with your members and supporting them. We have some fighters up there.
I want to hit on something you just said, and I had forgotten this, and I think when you actually spoke at our county GOP meeting almost a month ago, and I don't remember if this conversation was then or a phone conversation after, but the compromise that McCarthy made with the Biden administration, the House had already passed a bill, had already passed a much better bill. It was not like they hadn't already decided and already passed legislation. So then they go back after they passed it, after Biden refused for all this time to even talk to them. I mean, he wasn't even going to talk to them. Then they go basically crawling to him after they pass this. And then we lose everything that we'd already voted on, which I could understand how those other members felt like they were stabbed in the back.
Absolutely.
And I think we were stabbed in the back.
Yeah, this is a Bankrupt America bill that McCarthy passed. Yeah, he absolutely violated his agreements. It really tells you who he's representing. The bill that he and Biden came up with, there were more Democrats that passed that than Republicans. So, who is he representing here?
Yeah. We had a slide up a minute ago about your mission or about your strategy. And if you could put that back up just a second there, please, producer. Win the debate. And, you talked about the weekly call. When you win the debate, so if you're having a conversation let's say you have a decent relationship with your representative, you're having a conversation. If you don't have insight into what's going on in those committees, then you're basically just having to hope that your representative is telling you the truth and the whole truth. But to actually win the debate, we need that inside information so that when they tell us something that we know is not accurate or is not the whole truth, we can throw it back at them. That's true at the federal level, it's true at the state level. And I can tell you at the state level, you can have a politician out there that has a high rating by such and such organization for the votes they cast, but that doesn't tell you what they do in committee. And in Tennessee, and I'm sure at the federal level as well, pretty much everything lives or dies in committee as far as legislation goes. Most of the things, when they go to the floor, at least in Tennessee at the state level, it's not a surprise, generally speaking, what's going to happen on the House or Senate floor. That's already been decided in the Senate. That's where you really see if your guy or girl is doing what they told you they're going to do, how they actually fight in that committee, how they actually vote in that committee. So I think it's
exactly
important
right.
to have that inside information that you guys provide.
Yeah, and knowing the language and how to frame the conversation from an America First perspective. So you get that when you're on the call. And then, of course, we have our primers and our toolkits on our website as well to reinforce all of that. I suggest that activists don't necessarily try to know everything about everything, but pick a lane and really dive in on that issue. And it could be an issue you're interested in or have prior knowledge or experience with, whatever it might be. But pick an issue that you're going to really become like almost like a subject matter expert in, and then just read, and then of course listen to other people, and then listen to the opposition so you know what they're saying as well, and then you will be able to have really good conversations, because at the end of the day, we should be in partnership with our legislators, whether you're talking about the state or the federal level. We should be partnering with them. We can't just get them elected and send them off and say, okay, do a good job, and then not be checking in with them. And even just being a resource and bringing them good information, bring them good data, bring them good perspective. Be respectful, be polite,
Right.
but be firm. And I think they really do appreciate that. It's a lot more impactful to build that relationship over time than to just send an email, a form email, right before a vote.
Yeah. And what are some of the different issues that you guys deal with, or that you guys have some information on to pass on to the grassroots?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're definitely working on secure borders through Center for Renewing America. Tennessee's not a border state, but it still matters to us.
May as well be.
Yeah, right. Woke education, obviously that's near and dear to my heart. So talking to people about, first of all, what is woke, and what is woke education? What really is critical race theory and social emotional learning and restorative justice and all of these issues? What's really going on in our schools? Election integrity is typically the number one issue. When I talk to activists across the state, they're very concerned about free and fair elections. Definitely woke and weaponized government and the budget that goes with that.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that, because Russ was the budget director, so for him to look at how the federal budget, how money is spent, and what he's really identified is that there's a lot of money spent throughout these different agencies that is poisoning our country.
Oh, yeah,
So
absolutely.
just cutting a percentage off the top doesn't actually fix any problems. So if we said, okay, every agency is going to take a 2% cut, but if the rest of it is still woke and weaponized against us, and I mean weaponized as in, FBI using taxpayer money to go after
Parents.
citizens, parents, people that are saying, I don't want my kid masked at school, or people that are pro-life. And so to use your money to then go after you politically, that's a complete weaponization. So one of the things that was successful with that speaker fight was getting the weaponization committee, and we have that, and they're going through those hearings and looking for all of these instances where the Department of Justice has been weaponized against us, FBI and so on and so forth, censorship, all of those things. So one of the things we're looking at now in the appropriations process is those 12 appropriations bills. This is how the federal government gets their budget. So, what sort of spending is happening in those government agencies? Is the Department of Education, do we want them spending our money to teach anti-racism to 3-year-olds? No, we don't want that. To be pushing a transgender LG alphabet
Just
agenda on our kids.
alphabet pretty much covers it.
Yeah, so again, using our money and then weaponizing it on our children.
Yeah.
So those are, I never thought I was going to really have to cover life or abortion in Tennessee, but here we are. And Second Amendment, I didn't think that, if you had asked me a year ago, are your Second Amendment rights at risk, I would have thought no. Those are important issues as well.
Oh, yeah. Now, I mentioned a minute ago different agencies that rate politicians, and you guys do have something of a rating system, broken down by the district map for the different reps.
So I put this together not based off of our rating system, but based off of a congressional a legislative scorecard. So what you're seeing here is a Liberty score. So that comes from Conservative Review. It's not every vote that is taken in Congress,
Right.
but it would be the top conservative votes. So they're not going to be able to boost their score with super low-hanging fruit, right?
Right.
So these would be the votes that conservatives would be most concerned about. And your viewers are more than welcome to go to Conservative Review or just do a search for Liberty Score or Conservative Review, and you can pull up your legislators and you can actually look at the votes that were included in these scores. And then I also included, you don't have to change the slide, and I'll talk about those in a moment, a score from FreedomWorks, which is another legislative scorecard. So these are just two different scorecards. None of that is generated from our organization. But I used this congressional map, and I liked the idea of juxtaposing the district information and the Liberty scorecard from the legislator that holds that seat. And so if you look over at District 1 is in East Tennessee. The map's kind of small, so you can't see the names on here, but that's Diana Harshbarger.
Right.
And then you go across all the way to District 9, which is down in Shelby County and a little bit of Tipton County, and that's Cohen. He's a Democrat, so we don't really need to talk much about him. I don't even have his congressional score up here. But this is a really interesting map to look at because it tells you where the constituents are and then where the member is in comparison to that. So for example, District 1 is a Republican plus 30 district. So that's like a guaranteed, like a Republican's gonna win that district. Like there's no way a Democrat can come in and steal that seat from a Republican. So it's about as strong of a district that you can get. It's
Right.
the most conservative district in the state. And then the Liberty scorecard for the member holding that seat, Diana Harshbarger, is at a B, an 83%. So I would suggest that a district that's a Republican plus 30, that Liberty scorecard needs to go up, right? Maybe needs to be at least a 90% or higher. We move over to District 2, still a very strong district at an R plus 18, and the Liberty score is a 95. So that's a pretty good match. When you look at District 3, we have a problem. So we have Fleischman down in District 3. It still is a very strong Republican district, but that Liberty score, if you viewers can see that, is an F. It's a 56%. That's not a match.
Right.
The constituents in that district should be demanding a more conservative vote. And so if they're not able to get that, then they need to make a decision about what to do about that. So as you go through these districts, you see that they're all really strong. If they're about a Republican 7 or 8 or higher, that's pretty solid Republican. And you can see all of the scores that are listed there. So obviously we have a problem out in District 8 with Kustoff.
Yep.
Super solid Republican district, and he's also at an F. District 5, that's actually my district. That seat is held by Andy Ogles, and he's a freshman. These scores are from 2022, so he didn't have a Liberty score.
Right.
But I'll show you his FreedomWorks score in a minute. But out of all the districts, District 5 is probably the weakest. It's still strong Republican, but an R plus 9. So it's not the most solid, because Williamson County, I would say, is pretty purple at the moment. So this is an opportunity for the grassroots to look at that map and really assess the situation. And I'm not saying that if they don't have a 95 or 100% that you have to get rid of anyone. I'm not suggesting that. What I am suggesting is that we need to be influencing. We need to be coming alongside them where we can influence, where we can support them, where we can encourage them to move those conservative votes up. And then in the 2 districts that I don't think really are the districts are worth it, but maybe the members aren't going to be movable, that's where those constituents need to assess the situation and maybe need to take further action. Yeah. If you go to the FreedomWorks scorecards, they're very consistent with the Liberty score, but this is more, this includes 2023 votes. Mm-hmm. And on the next page, you'll see Andy Ogles has a 100% on the FreedomWorks score. And so I just want to point out that that's District 5 is the least strong. It's not weak, but it's the weakest of all the districts. And so he's the one that's probably the most at risk, and yet he's the one who is being the most bold and courageous in his votes in Washington. Now, he is brand new. He's only been up there for what we're going on 7 months now. Right. So we still need to be supporting and encouraging and coming alongside and saying, yes, this is why we sent you. We sent you to be bold like this. We sent you to save our country, right? And some of the others, they need to hear that message too.
I just want to say one thing. East Tennessee, District 1, 2, and 3, historically, they've been Republican. I mean, just going back forever, they've been Republican. But they've never been especially conservative, and they're still not. So we see this is just laid out on a map for us, and not just East Tennessee, some of the other places too, some of the other reps, where they have a strong Republican base, not necessarily a conservative base. And that's been a long-term problem. We have a supermajority in our legislature in both the House and the Senate, and we have had since about, I think, 2012, 2013, somewhere in that time frame. We have never had the amount of corresponding solid conservative legislation come out of that supermajority that should have been there, that we should have. The things that we have to fight for with a Republican supermajority, and the state is red, and I think the citizens are red, but way too many of the legislators are actually purple. So I'm not really surprised to see what you're seeing, what you show there in those districts, and the GOP in general. I mean, unfortunately, GOP does not equal conservative. Republican does not equal conservative. And that's been for the grassroots, that's been one of the most frustrating things that we've had to deal with. Now, you showed both of those scores. I think there was something, there's two different, your focus in Tennessee, because even though you're a national organization, you work at the state level, and as you said, you have these different issues that you focus on, but you kind of let the local grassroots decide the key things. And I think you said that in Tennessee, it's primarily election integrity and education. That's the two. And you actually have two separate organizations for those, correct?
Right. Well, so let me just talk real quick about what you have up on the screen right now, though, before I go on to the coalitions, because you've got the grassroots development training up there. Yeah. So this is a training that I do monthly on Zoom on a Saturday morning, and it's really teaching a grassroots activist who wants to be engaged, wants to be involved, exactly how to get the access to legislators, gain the access, and then really develop the relationships so that you can develop the influence and then make an impact. And so it is a kind of a heavy lift because it does involve building those relationships. But that's exactly what I go over in that grassroots development training and how to be more effective. And then I do spend a little bit of time when I go through that Zoom training on the process of a bill going through the Tennessee State Legislature. But moving on to the two state coalitions. So like we mentioned, election integrity is a big issue for people. People are losing confidence in our elections. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of transparency. And also in Tennessee, I would say that across the board, many people don't feel like they're being heard when it comes to, their issues with election integrity. So I was asked to start a statewide coalition in the state of Tennessee. And the goal, and so for both of these coalitions, they really run on the same framework, which is to support the counties. The work is done in the county on election integrity,
Right.
whether it's looking at voter rolls or protecting vulnerable voters or looking into what's happening on college campuses. This is not necessarily something that's done at a state I mean, there's legislation that can be passed, but the actual work is done in the counties. So the framework is to build out a county task force for every single county. So that would be a group of, say, maybe 10 to 20 people in every county that are focused on election integrity, or in the case of education, focused on education. And then what we do is we bring them together once a week on a Zoom call where we communicate and we collaborate. And we use that Zoom call as a platform for educating as well. We partner for election integrity. We partner with some national organizations like the Election Integrity Network, and they also provide some resources for our members to really learn more. So you can learn the best practices across the board. And so we're finding out some really cool things. Well, I shouldn't say cool. We're finding out good information. We're getting good information, but it's not always the kind of information you want to find out. For example, like what's happening on our college campuses and how these leftist NGOs are infiltrating our campuses, infiltrating our county election commissions, and influencing them and doing trainings with them. So we're learning all kinds of information, but it's because we work nationwide and communicate with other states. And then as a state coalition, we're communicating across the state amongst the counties. So people are really coming together and learning. So, for example, you can be in Knox County or Sevier County, and you can learn something from someone in Shelby County and then go apply it in your state. So it's been wonderful. We did have legislation last session. It wasn't successful. But we are back to try again, and we're not going away. This is a permanent structure so that we can see permanent election integrity in Tennessee. I will say this, we are doing better than other states. We do 3 things really well. We do have require ID to vote.
Right.
We do not have ranked choice voting, and we do not do a mass mail-in ballot system. We do an absentee ballot, and we do a pretty good job of vetting people for the absentee ballot. So we're not as bad off as some states, but there are still vulnerabilities. And what we would encourage, or basically our motto, our mission is authenticate the ballot, authenticate the voter, and authenticate the vote. So that's really what we're here to do. And then, so if your viewers are interested in being a part of election integrity, we'll share my contact information here shortly, and they are just more than welcome to email me and say, I want to be a part of election integrity, and tell me your information, and I will send you all the Zoom link information. And likewise for education.
But before we get to
Yeah.
education, okay, I've heard, Tennessee is supposedly, I think, rated the top 3 state in the nation for election integrity. And of course, our, elected officials and people in the legislature, they like to harp on that. And
Yes, they
so,
do.
so do you think obviously that makes it harder, in my opinion, to get something through? And so how are you guys trying to counter that argument? And what is their argument, and what's your counter to that? So yes, okay, we're number 3, but what does number 3 really mean, and where are we still vulnerable at?
The scorecard they're referring to says that we're number 1 in election integrity. And so that's the talking point that you hear over and over ad nauseum. We're number 1, we're number 1. Well, we're number 1 because what was looked at were those 3 things.
Okay.
But that's all that was looked at. I would say most people across the state of Tennessee that I talk to want to see a secure hand-marked paper ballot. Yep. People are not trusting of the ballot marking devices. Another problem that we have in state, it's not in every single county, but it's growing across the counties, is taking us out of precinct voting and pushing us into convenience vote centers, right?
Yeah.
And so that removes you from voting in your neighborhood where, you are known and recognized and so forth. And also puts hundreds of ballots into a vote center because they say it's so convenient. You can go anywhere in the county to vote. And we have several counties that are using this model, and it's growing. Henry County is a new one that's going to be rolling this pilot program out. And that's your neighbor, right? So watch out, Stewart County. It's coming to you soon, too. We tried to fight it. None of this was passed with the consent of the citizens. No one ever asked us. So what they do is they say you can go to any vote center, right? So let's say there's 7 vote centers. So in Williamson County, we went from 43 precincts into 7 vote centers. Or maybe it was more than 7. Maybe it was just 7 for early voting. But either way, it was reduced by a lot. And so in order to do that, they have to have every ballot type available. Well, to make every ballot type available, now they say that's why we have to have ballot marking devices. So that we can have every ballot available. And that's why we have to use an optical scanner because, we don't want to have to sort them all out in order to count them and so on and so forth. So they've created a system where there's so many steps and obstacles in between the voter and actually casting their vote.
And of course,
that's where we're losing confidence.
The companies that make the voting machines, of course, they have lobbyists in Nashville just like they have them in D.C. And they're not hurting for money and influence.
Right, exactly.
And then you also have the education organization here in Tennessee.
Yes. Yeah, so by the way, you can go to Tennessee Fair Elections, tnfairelections.org. You can see our website. You can join us on there as well if that makes it easier for people. And then we do have a Facebook page that's also TN Tennessee Fair Elections on Facebook, so you can find us there as well. So then the other coalition is called TEDCO, and that just stands for Tennessee Education Coalition, and it's the same concept. I'm working to build out a task force in every county so that we have people that are equipped and educated on what's going on in education, that they can be a support system for their school board members. We're also looking to flip school board seats. So helping people understand what the issues are, find out where your school board members are on those issues, how have they been voting, where do they stand, identify who they are, identify good candidates, build a team to support them and get them elected, and then continue supporting them while they're in their term. Again, it goes back to we can elect really good people, but they don't always know everything about all of the issues, and they need citizen support for that. And so that is another Zoom call, again, where we bring the counties together and we communicate and collaborate on that Zoom call so that, again, someone in East Tennessee can be learning from someone in West Tennessee and supporting each other.
You mentioned know what's going on, and the legislators, they're on certain committees. So generally speaking, during the session, they only know what's going through their committee. And so we need more people in the counties that focus on the different issues. Schools are a big one. Education is a big one, whether you're talking the school curriculum or the garbage that's in our libraries, in our school libraries. And so we need that, to not just for the legislators, but we need that for the school board, because I guarantee you, I've been to a few school board meetings, and I'm going to say that probably in most rural counties, it works the same way. You have maybe a couple of people on that board that actually keep up with anything. Your chair is normally somebody who's been involved with education in some way, shape, or form, and has some experience with that, whether it's ex-teacher, ex-principal, whatever. And the rest of the members don't necessarily have a background in education. And they don't necessarily keep up with what's going on in the state. And they just defer to whatever that chairman suggests. And that chairman...
Well, you know what I see?
Yeah.
they don't even defer to the chairman sometimes. What I see in my county is they go around, they talk about the issues, and then the chair turns to the superintendent and asks, how do you recommend? What do you recommend? And then they vote in our case based on that. And in our case, I would say we have 2 out of 12 school board members that are willing to vote on principle, that are willing to stand up for our kids, to get the obscene materials out. Back when they were masking our kids, the kind of votes that protects parents' rights. And the rest of them just go right along with the flow of whatever and it's not just the superintendent, often it's the school district's attorney.
Right.
And then the school board has an attorney as well, and they're always, getting everyone worked up over potential lawsuits. So most of our school board members are more afraid of an ACLU lawsuit than they are of God.
Yeah, and certainly more so than parents, and most parents. And I think this is a problem in the rural districts, and I live in a rural district. Most of the people there are from there, and they just automatically trust the people that are there because they think, well, hey, I know old Joe, and he would never do anything wrong, so whatever he's saying, whatever he's doing must be the right thing. Or he's telling the truth, and it's all the state's fault, and they have nothing that they can do about it, which is not always the case. They play the Board of Education, as well as county commissions will play against the state. Will say, hey, the state requires it. Then sometimes you get to digging and you realize, no, the state doesn't necessarily require that. You just have to have the backbone in the brains to speak up in some cases. And a lot of them don't have that.
Exactly right.
So
kind of like those butter votes you were talking about.
The butter votes,
earlier.
the second butters, the second butters.
Yes.
I believe in the Second Amendment, but with all these excuses, and we've got a lot of those.
Yes.
We've got a lot of those.
Yeah.
So is there anything else that you'd like to let people know? I will say this. You spoke at our meeting not quite a month ago, and we went well over an hour at that meeting. But if you've not had her come and speak to your group, whether it's your county GOP, conservative organization, whatever, you really need to. She does a great job. She's got even more information to share than what we were able to cover here on this program. So I definitely encourage you, if you haven't had her come speak, have her come speak. Is there anything else that you'd like to go over with? We still got a few minutes here.
I think that we hit just about everything. I appreciate the invitation, and definitely there are more counties that I need to visit that I haven't quite been to or met. So I've reached out to many of them, so check your email. You might find an email from me, and I'm more than happy to talk to you and get you on my calendar and put the miles on my Honda.
Okay, and here's her contact info. She's done 20 counties. She's got 75 to go. So call and get your county to be the next in line for Andrea to come and talk to your group.
That would be awesome.
Once again, appreciate you being with us. Great talking with you. Appreciate the information and appreciate what you do.
Thank you so much, Dave.
You take care. Have a good night. Thank everybody for joining us tonight. If you like what you heard, hit the like button, subscribe button. Next week, we will have Constitutional Attorney Jeff Cobble with us out of East Tennessee, and we'll be talking things like nullification, 10th Amendment, state sovereignty, and other issues like that. So join us next week. Hey, thanks again for tuning in tonight. We appreciate you. See you next Monday. Good night.